and welcome to Route 3 of Cross London Visual Marathon. This route goes from East India DLR Station all the way into Canary Wharf, and it's a fantastic route taking you through the first part of the docks and this entrance basin into the city that used to be West India Docks, but is now a shining example of steel and glass and a great financial city. I'm Philip Carey from stridencities.com, and I am going to be your guide as I take you along a point of view route, as well as giving you an audio guide of the things that you can see along the way, what to look out for, and places to come back to when you're doing it more at your leisure. Thank you, I hope you enjoy it.
This route will take you to the wonderful towering glass and steel structures of Canary Wharf and explore the history of the West India Docks on which it sits. This is the third route in the East London collection that explores all the historical locations that stretch towards the City of London. It starts at East India DLR Station and then heads towards Pontoon Dock, then it goes around Blackwall Basin and then into Canary Wharf and explores the new Harbour and Wood Wharf areas before going along the southern side of South Dock and then back across the Footbridge and then finishing off at Canary Wharf Underground Station. We start outside the DLR station, which was opened in 1984 as a driverless train, which was an innovation in its time. And this line follows a similar route to the London and Blackwall Railway, which opened in 1840 and had an innovative cable and hauling system stretching 3.5 miles from the Minories near the Tower of London to Blackwall, serving the dockers and people who were arriving by boat at Brunswick Quay near the East India Dock. And on our left-hand side, there was Blackwall Yard, which was one of the longest operating and most distinguished shipyards in British history, employing thousands of people in a self-contained industry community with forges, rope-making and sail loft. And this is due for a redevelopment with houses and schools, with the 1780 historic Raveling Dock transformed into a new community space. And Docklands is under transformation, and there's an example here on our left-hand side, which is Telly House, which opened in 1990 and was the first carrier-neutral facility where multiple telecommunication companies could host their infrastructure under one roof. And Blackwall got its name because it was a medieval mud wall to manage tidal flooding. But because of the nature of the river going down towards the Isle of Dogs, it had a very deep entry into the water, which was ideal for shipbuilding. And the yard built some of the most famous vessels of the age of sail, including for the Royal Navy and the East India Company. Another innovation was the Blackwall Tunnel, which was built in 1897, the first subaqueous tunnel in the world. And the two ventilation shafts we can see on our left were built in the 1930s to extract all the car fumes, as it was originally built for horse and carts. And this is the northbound tunnel, the southbound being built in 1967. But this has a number of curves, not because they got lost when they were building it, but they had to make sure that the horses didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel as they were going through it, otherwise they would have bolted. As we get to the end, we've got the Aspen Way on the right-hand side, which will take you to the Blackwall Tunnel, but also to the new Silvertown crossing, which will go towards the Greenwich Peninsula. Now we're going to go around the corner, and if you went straight towards the river here, you would see that the river turns as it goes around the Isle of Dogs. And this is not really an island, it's a 6.8 kilometre peninsula, giving a dramatic loop in the Thames. And it was called the Isle of Dogs, supposedly because that's where Henry III kept his hunting dogs. And until the 19th century, it was just agriculture and marshland, but it did become the prime site for the West India Dock, which came about because of a consortium of West Indian merchants who had grown frustrated with the chaos and theft and inefficiencies of the open riverside wharves that stretched all the way down to the City of London. They wanted a purpose-built enclosed dock, which they got, and it was built in 3 years and opened in 1802, mainly built by hand with over 1,200 men shifting 600,000 tonnes of material, mainly by hand, pickaxe, wheelbarrows and horse-drawn carts, which is an amazing piece of engineering and endurance. And we're going to explore the docks in detail along this route, but the first one we come to is Poplar Dock, which is at the western end of the West India Dock complex. We're going to explore it by going up the stairs, and today it is a lovely peaceful marina, with lots of leisure craft and its own distinctive floating community, and today it's managed by the Canal and River Trust and forms part of the blue-green infrastructure that the urban planners wanted to combine with the waterways, accessibility and ecology. However, when it was built for trade. But Poplar Dock was slightly different in that it was originally created as a reservoir to help keep the water levels across the whole dock constant and clean. But in 1850 it became the first dock to have its own railway system and was used to handle timber and large volumes of incoming coal and to receive exports goods from around the country that would then be transported across the world. Poplar Dock was also known for its large number of hydraulic cranes, some of which we can see here, and records indicate there were roughly 73 cranes that helped speed up the transfer of coal and goods from ships to rail and vice versa. Another important aspect of this dock was the incorporation in 1880 of the Poplar Dry Dock, which was used for maintenance and repair of both wooden and the new ironclad vessels. And this is just the entrance, and it used to stretch all around the corner and help get ships ready for their next voyage and to repair those that were damaged on the way into the docks. The next area we will come across is Blackwall Basin, which was the first non-tidal gateway into the West India docks. And we'll see this as we go around the corner. The entrance would have been to the left, nearby where those green trees are, but today this is no longer operational. But it used to take the ships in from the River Thames, and then on its second lock it used to release them into the Blackwall Basin. And the ships used to sit here and make their way down to the two lock gates at the bottom. The one on the right hand side would have taken you to the North Dock, which would have been the import dock, and the one on the left would have taken you to the export dock. And then there would be a stream of ships coming out of Blackwall Basin headed off on their next voyage. Today this area is very pleasant and is called Barge City and is a great contrast between the steel and glass structures ahead of us, which is called Canary Wharf, which is a general name for most of this area. And one theory is that it gets its name from the Westward Wharf, which was used by the Fruit Line Company importing goods from the Canary Islands, such as bananas, tomatoes and other fruits. And coincidentally, the Latin name for the Canary Islands actually means the Island of Dogs. We're going to go up the stairs and we're going to go into the heart of Canary Wharf. Once we get to the top, we're just going to cross the road and take a look at the North Dock of the West India Dock, which was the import dock, where all ships had to go in and then pay their taxes. This is mostly filled in, and this map shows you the filled in areas. But you'll also see that the big building there is Billingsgate Fish Market, which moved here from the City of London in 1982 and is due to be moved further out towards Dagenham. We're going to enter into Canary Wharf via Churchill Place. And these sorts of buildings are very unfamiliar for English towns and cities. But you will find this is a lovely new environment to explore. And ahead of us in the distance is One Canada Square, which was completed in 1991 and is the iconic centrepiece of Canary Wharf Estate, and was designed by Cesar Pelle at 230 metres tall, 50 stories, and was the tallest UK building for over 2 decades, and helped establish Canary Wharf as one of the world's leading financial districts, paving way for other skyscrapers, but also making it a city within inside a city. And there's 2 detours you can take from here, one going straight towards Canada Square ahead of us, which is a lovely green space, and to the right will take you to Crosswell Place, which is a striking roof garden and one of the most innovative public places added to Canary Wharf in recent years. And we're going to turn left down Montgomery Street and explore the new eastern side of Canary Wharf and some of its modern day developments and thinking. And the area to the right is Mongomery Square, which we'll come back to at the end of the route after we've done this 2.5 kilometre detour. And just in terms of reference, this area would have been the middle or the export dock of the original West India docks, which you can see on this overlay map. And we're going to turn left and go across Montgomery Bridge and head down towards the new public places of Wood Wharf and Harbour Quay. And in contrast to many of the buildings on the western side, these have been designed for mixed use, entertainment, and to admire Canary Wharf in all its glory. And as we head down here towards Harbour Quay Gardens, which is a thoughtfully landscaped area that not only offers a waterfront boardwalk, stunning views and places to sit and enjoy, it also has a rich history. Now, South Dock was the newest addition to the West India docks. If we have a look at the original map, you would see that there was just 2 docks, the import dock, the North Dock, and the export dock, with Blackwall Basin in the middle. Below that was a canal for those ships who didn't want to go all the way around the Isle of Dogs, but that was not a commercial success. So the West India Dock bought this and created the South Quay and made the canal much wider, as you can see from this diagram, as well as adding Poplar Dock. This was a larger and deeper dock to cater for the larger ships which were coming in as the British Empire expanded. And since we can't go all the way to the end, we're going to turn up Hazleton Walk and then into Union Square to see a bit more of this development. The story of Canary Wharf's development has unfolded over 5 decades, since the end of the docks in 1980 to when Canary Wharf started to be developed in 1988, starting with starting with the One Cannister Square building, which we talked about earlier. And the Canary Wharf Group had its roots in the original Olympia and York Development Consortium, which built the first phase in the 1980s. And that development process is still ongoing, but it has changed. And we're going to turn right when we get to Union Square, which is in this new development called Wood Wharf. And Union Square goes from Montgomery Bridge to Coldharbour. And it's a lovely area to walk down because there's often events taking place in here, such as the illuminations, which happens during the winter. But there are also other events, markets and sporting activities all around the area, making it a genuine round-the-clock neighbourhood rather than one that empties after office hours. Canary Wharf's new development are undergoing a significant period of transformation, shifting from a purely office-focused district into a more diverse mixed-use neighbourhood, with developments such as this one in Wood Wharf creating thousands of new homes, a new park, primary schools, hotel and community facilities, as well as attracting businesses from the life science and healthcare, as well as finance. And this route will bring us into one of the new squares here with its own park and mixed-use areas with residential buildings, shops and offices. And it's quite interesting to contrast the development of this type of environment versus the areas such as Marylebone and Mayfair that were developed in the Georgian periods, to compare and contrast. But we're going to come out of here into one of the older areas that were at the edge of the dock and take a brief look at Coldharbour, which is a common name in England and it typically denotes a place of rudimentary shelter. A cold harbour was simply an overnight stopover place, often for drovers of cattle, so no warmth or services. However, this cold harbour developed into its own community and today has a number of historic Georgian buildings, and it also has its own gastropub with great views over the river, including those of the O2. And we're going to turn right and we're going to head towards the Blue Bridge, which are in fact the lock gates that control the levels of the West India South Dock, and like Blackwall Basin, allow vessels to pass between the tidal Thames and the non-tidal Dock Basin. And it does still occasionally open, as you can see from this picture of one of the super yachts leaving the South Dock. Once we get to the other side, we're going to take a left turn just past the barrier, and this will take us into the southern side of South Dock. And we're going to go down these small set of stairs past the white gates on the right and head towards the slightly hidden path between the houses and the dock's white fence. As we follow this around, you'll start to see glimpses of the modern Canary Wharf estate before we turn the corner at the new Dollar Bay apartment building with its garden features. We will then emerge at the waterfront to see one of the best views of the Canary Wharf in all its glory, with the South Dock reflecting the glass and steel cityscape that surround it. And this is a perfect early morning photo stop. The blue and white boat on our right hand side is in fact the HSQT Lord Amory, which is the permanent moored headquarters and training ship used by the Docklands Scouts and was originally a Dutch North Sea pilot vessel until it was converted in 1981. But there are other boats here which are not so permanent, such as this super yacht on our right hand side. And this dock is important because the South Dock is the furthest point upstream on the River Thames where medium-sized Royal Navy vessels can be turned around, making it a regular spot for visiting ships. And this is a picture of one of the largest boats I've ever seen here, which was used by the German Olympic team in 2012. The docks were also very innovative in how they worked, because when ships came in to the River Thames, they were stopped by the Trinity House pilots, who were responsible for guiding ships up into these docks in the tricky Thames water. And they used a sophisticated arrangement of signals to send information up into these docks to tell it was coming, but also down to the cities, to the traders, so that funds could be made available and debt settled. However, the journey could take between 1 and 3 weeks, depending on the wind, the tides, and the amount of boats on the river. So there could be up to 2,000 vessels in varying sizes, stretching between London Bridge and Gravesend, and the docks themselves could only take 600 vessels at any one time. And because most of the goods were coming from the West Indies, carrying sugar, rum and coffee, their trade was seasonal, adding to the complexity of managing an operation with inside the docks. And the docks were expanding. We're going to be turning up Millwall Passage, that was added in 1928. It allowed ships and barges to move seamlessly between Millwall Dock, which is on the other side of the DLR station, which we can see in front of us, and the South Dock system, and unified the water levels in both docks. Millwall Dock was built about the same time as South Dock and opened in 1868 as a direct competitor to the West India Dock. The docks were designed primarily for the grain trade, and its tidal basin and granary facilities were state-of-the-art for their time. We are going to go around and back to the south dock along Marsh Wall, but the original Marsh Wall was built along the entire length of the western edge of the Isle of Dogs, as we can see from this map, and it was used to protect the marshland from flooding so that it could be used for pasture. And its large embankment had a number of windmills all along it to grind the grains into flour, which is where the area gets its name, Millwall. And just to help you get your bearings, the building we can see in front of us across the water is Harbour, Quay and Wood Wharf, which we saw earlier. And as we turn the corner, you'll see there's much more places to eat and drink, as this is a commuter route taking people into the main financial district within inside Canary Wharf. Historically, this whole area would have been full of ships, with thousands of dockers working in the port, which was a hard and dangerous profession with no regular income. However, there was a massive support staff linked to the dockers. The West India Dock Company operated a sophisticated but bureaucratic administration system with permanent staff such as clerks, weighers, warehouse keepers and surveyors and lock keepers keeping records at every point along the journey and recording all this information. So much so that for every 10 docker labourers there was approximately one administrator or supervisory staff. And the ships, when they entered the dock, could stay anywhere between 1 and 6 weeks, with the medium-sized boats from the West Indies having a stay of between 3 to 6 weeks, but then they would only have done about one journey a year. And we're going to head down towards the South Quay Bridge, and as you can see there's lots of places to eat and drink here, and tends to be very popular after work, with the modern day worker earning and living in considerably more comfort than their historic counterparts. This South Quay Bridge has some wonderful views both towards the east and towards the west, but the lock gate on the western side no longer operates. As we get to the end, we can go straight through this building into the plaza beyond, but we're going to turn right and we're going to go down and head towards our end location at the Canary Wharf Underground Station. And the West India Docks went through a number of innovations during its lifetime, from the 1800s, where you went from sailing boats to modern steamships, the frequency from seasonal down to continuous year-round scheduled routes, cargo change from rum, sugar and coffee to a diverse bulk of goods, timber, grain and manufactured items. And the labour methods changed from being manual and winches into mechanisation, palletisation and effective hydraulic cranes. However, its demise came through bigger and larger container ships from the 1960s onwards, which necessitated ports further downstream in such as Tilbury and Felixstowe. And we're going to turn left and head towards our exit through this tree-lined area, which will take you into Upper Bank Street, and it has Jubilee Place Park on our left-hand side, which is a 3-acre park which is wonderfully laid out with curved water features and paths, and it's built on top of both a car park and a shopping centre. We're going to finish off in Mongomery Square, which we passed 2.5 kilometres earlier, which is a vibrant public square which often has events and street food market as well as artwork that can be enjoyed. But we're going to turn around and face the station, which is the end of this part of the route. And this is a reminder of all the other routes in the East London collection that you can do on their own, together, or you can explore any of the other routes in the Across London Visual Marathon collection.
This is the end of Route 3 of the Across London Visual Marathon, and we're now in Canary Wharf. I hope you enjoyed it, but there's 3 things I want you to take away. The first one is please subscribe to this channel so I can keep you up to date with future routes, but also I would like to make this channel ad-free. Second thing is, when you do decide to do this for real, use the links below. It has a detailed guide, so you've got everything in one place, all your maps, all your sites, all those places to look at when you return at your leisure. And the third is, just do more routes. Understand London, learn it, learn about its culture. You'll find all the routes inside our website. Thank you. And we always want you to enjoy all these places so you can see them before you do up your laces.